Edward Bishop's home was filled with the warmth of a lifetime. But the suitcases by the front door said this chapter was over.
Dad, I've found a place that's more within our means. Things are tight. I am doing this for you.
Edward didn't argue. He just turned and walked to his study, where a hidden wall safe held what his son knew nothing about. Inside the safe was a single document, old and kept for a moment exactly like this. The drive to Crestview was long. Mark filled the silence with nervous chat about investments and markets.
You'll be comfortable there, Dad. I'll visit every week, I promise.
Crestview Care Home loomed ahead, gray concrete, barred windows, a sign that had needed repainting for years.
My son told me this was the only place he could afford. He lied.
He followed a bored orderly down a flickering corridor. The air smelled of bleach and stale regret. The room was small, the mattress thin. A cockroach darted across the floor. Edward sat down, opened his notebook, and began to write. Edward paused by a maintenance log. The entries were scant. A call button dangled from its bracket, wires exposed. The dining hall smelled of boiled cabbage and neglect. Residents pushed gray food around their trays.
You are the new resident. I am Mrs. Whitaker. I am sure you'll find everything adequate.
Edward Bishop. I am certain it will be. Memorable.
He took a seat near a foggy window. A tray of congealed stew was placed before him. He lifted a forkful. The meat was cold, rubbery, and utterly flavorless. At the next table, a man stared past his untouched plate. A yellowing bruise marked his forearm.
Mrs. Whitaker passed without a look. To her, they were all just a line on a budget.
He pushed his tray away and walked back through the flickering corridor, his expression hard to read. Back in his room, he opened his notebook. The first entry, Crestview, Day 1, broken equipment, inedible food, detached staff. By the third morning, Edward had filled 3 pages. The patterns of neglect were unmistakable. In the west corridor, a stooped woman with a walker paused beside him. Her eyes were sharp, but her voice trembled. She whispered that her pills came late, her room unchecked. The neglect was institutional.
We'll compare notes. A place like this has a paper trail, and paper trails can be read.
Mark arrived that afternoon, car idling at the curb, carrying a plastic bag and a salesman's smile. He handed Edward a pair of slippers. Memory foam. Dad. Top quality. The dollar store label proved otherwise.
I've got a client meeting. I'll call you.
His 4th client meeting this month. The slippers would be his receipt for another withdrawal.
As soon as the car pulled away, Edward walked to the payphone at the end of the east wing. He spoke in code. The business card read James Alden, attorney at law. He'd kept it for decades. Edward spread a floor plan across his bed. He circled exposed pipes, a broken call button, and a loose railing. His notebook recorded the hazards. East wing, exposed wires, broken call button, loose bathroom rail. In the south corridor, a nurse yanked a curtain around a groaning resident, cutting off his cry. The man's hand reached out, but the nurse didn't look back.
Another shift. Another ignored call. The neglect here was methodical, almost institutional.
Mr. Bishop, I've seen you lurking. That notebook. Give it to me now. We don't need residents upsetting the routine. This isn't a hotel.
She dropped the notebook into her desk drawer, but Edward had already photographed every page. That night, he slipped into the dark office and retrieved the original from the drawer. It was time for hard evidence. From his suitcase, he pulled a small surveillance camera. He taped it to the window ledge, lens trained on the corridor, and pressed record. Mark returned the next week, waving a bank statement like a trophy. His smile was wider than his conscience.
See this, Dad? $3,200 a month. Top shelf care, worth every penny.
Edward studied the statement with careful gratitude. The withdrawal was nearly double what Crestview actually received.
I am making it work. A few smart investment moves cover the difference.
He checked his phone, already striding to his car, nursing his latest investment like a secret. As the sedan merged into traffic, Edward walked to the payphone in the east wing.
James. The date is Tuesday. Have the records pulled from the holding company.
In his room, he retrieved the laptop concealed beneath the false bottom of his suitcase. On the screen, the holding company's organizational chart branched like a silent, sprawling tree. His name sat at the root, unchallenged and absolute. He'd been ready for years. On a gray Tuesday, a state inspector arrived unannounced. His sedan was black, his clipboard sharp. Mrs. Whitaker stiffened, snapping at a nurse to hide the broken call buttons. Her voice was a panicked whisper. Edward approached, his hand quick. A folded paper pressed into the inspector's palm. The note listed 5 hazards: exposed wires, a burst pipe, missing fire alarms. The inspector's face tightened. He checked each one. The call button, the loose rail. His pen scratched violations into his report. Mrs. Whitaker intercepted him, her voice honeyed with false concern. Then her phone rang. It was a call from corporate. The inspector's pen stopped. A few quiet words, and he nodded. The inspector closed his clipboard. The violations were dismissed, noted, but not acted on. Edward understood. The rot went deeper than a single administrator. Corporate was protecting the neglect. That night, he added a new note to his file. The chain must be cleaned from the top, the strain told. One morning, mid-stride down the east corridor, the world tilted. Edward's hand shot to the wall. Marge found him wavering. Without a word, she took his arm and led him back to his room. She brought a tray of soup and a piece of bread, then sat by his bed. He'd never asked for a kindness, but she gave it freely. He reached under his pillow and drew out a sealed envelope, heavy with paper. "If something happens," he whispered, "give this to no one but my lawyer." The days that followed were slow. His color returned by Friday, and on Saturday morning, his phone chimed. A text from James Alden, delivery confirmed for Tuesday. All records assembled. Edward deleted the message, then pulled up a calendar entry. Tuesday. The regional director would arrive at 10 a.m. He dressed carefully, a charcoal quarter zip, clean trousers, his shoes polished. It was time to be seen. The staff noticed the change. Mrs. Whitaker watched from her doorway, a flicker of unease crossing her face. He walked to the window of his room and stood, hands in pockets, watching the parking lot. Tuesday had come. A black sedan pulled into the lot at exactly 10. The man who stepped out never glanced at the peeling sign. Mrs. Whitaker rushed to the entrance, clipboard pressed to her chest. Her practiced smile faltered when he walked past. The regional manager stopped in the common room where Edward stood, hands in his pockets. The entire wing went still.
I didn't want anyone to know. That's why I am here, to inspect what my investment has become. Now, let's see the books. All of them. And I want Miss Whitaker's office prepared.
A nurse dropped her tray. The clatter of plastic cups echoed. No one moved to pick them up. Edward walked toward Mrs. Whitaker's office. The regional manager followed, his posture now that of an aide.
The owner, he was the owner the whole time. I took his notebook. I dismissed his complaints.
Edward took the chair behind the desk. Boxes of records were brought in. The audit had begun. He opened the first binder, its pages yellowed. The numbers inside would tell the whole sordid story. By afternoon, the dining hall tables were buried under file boxes. Edward cross-referenced invoices against bank statements, his pen never stopping. He found a recurring charge labeled Premium Resident Fee, the exact amount Mark had withdrawn, but never paid.
This account has been siphoning funds for months. I want the name behind it.
The regional manager leaned closer, his shirt collar damp. A name surfaced, a trust linked to Mark Bishop.
My son. Of course. The signature is his. Mrs. Whitaker is on administrative leave, effective immediately. Security will escort her out.
The regional manager's face went pale. He fumbled for his phone, already dialing to inform the board.
Call a board meeting for tomorrow. I will address the directors myself.
The regional manager nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. The reckoning was only beginning. Edward's pen tapped once on the ledger. The numbers had spoken. Word of the audit leaked before dinner. Charlotte Bishop heard it from a friend and drove to Mark's office.
Dad told me about your savings on his care. $3,000 a month. Where's the money, Mark?
Your grandfather is old and confused. I've managed his finances for years. Stay out of this.
She stepped out and texted Edward. Mark just lied to my face. What's happening? Edward's reply came seconds later. Everything is under control. Trust me. But Mark wasn't waiting. He grabbed his keys and sped toward Crestview, his mind a tangle of suspicion.
Henley's car. The regional director doesn't make house calls. What is this?
He walked through the entrance and saw the staff's faces. Pale, silent, avoiding his eyes, he pushed past the nursing station toward Mrs. Whitaker's office. The door was shut, but voices bled through. He heard his father's voice, calm and commanding. Mark's hand closed on the handle. The air left his lungs.
What the hell is this? Henley, why are you in this office? Dad, what have you done?
Edward lifted a hand, a single wave. The regional manager picked up his papers and left without a word.
Sit down, Mark. You are going to want to hear this.
He slid a single document across the desk. Bishop Holdings, LLC, the holding company that owned Crestview.
His name is on the top. He owns everything. This whole place. The chain.
You placed me here to preserve your inheritance, but you forgot to check who I am. I've owned these walls since before you learned to lie.
He listed every withdrawal, every unpaid bill, every visit that was a performance. The silence in the room turned crushing.
I was just managing the expenses. The market dipped. I was protecting you. You have to understand.
Number. You were preserving yourself, and that's a profound disappointment.
Mark's hands went limp on his lap. The numbers he thought he'd buried were now a monument to his greed.
You've been sitting on a fortune I couldn't touch. I had to make ends meet. The expenses were real, Dad.
Edward let the excuses hang in the air. He didn't interrupt. When Mark finally ran out of words, Edward stood, and the room felt smaller.
Enough. We're past justifications.
He pulled a worn business card from his pocket and dialed. James Alden answered on the first ring as if expecting the call.
Begin the process. All of it. Revise every document, every account. He gets nothing, not a single cent. You will have no part in my legacy, not a single dollar, not a single share. You are no longer my heir.
Mark's face crumpled. He reached for the edge of the desk, his knuckles white, as if the wood could hold him upright.
You can't cut me out. I am your son. Everything I did, every decision, was for this family. You have to believe me.
You stopped being my son the moment you saw me as a line item on a budget.
He tucked his notebook under his arm and walked out of the office without a backward glance, leaving Mark alone with the wreckage of his own making. Security appeared by the door, as if summoned by the silence. Mark was still at the desk, his face blotchy and wet.
You'll regret this, Dad. You'll regret treating me like some stranger off the street.
Outside, he paced next to his car, punched a number into his phone, then let it fall silent. His lawyer couldn't help now. Inside Mrs. Whitaker's office, Edward turned to a fresh page in his notebook. Henley stood in the doorway, awaiting orders.
Release the full renovation budget. New mattresses, new kitchen equipment. Hire additional nurses by the end of the week. The residents will have proper meals, proper care. I want repairs started by tomorrow morning. And Henley, I'll be here every day, watching. Ensure the staff understands that.
The word spread within the hour. Nurses who once avoided eye contact now stood taller, their movements quicker. A young nurse passed Edward in the hall and almost bowed. "Mr. Bishop," she whispered, "thank you for staying."
This is what leadership looks like. Not a corner office, but a room with a broken call button, now fixed.
By the end of the week, Crestview hummed with construction. The old sign was taken down, fresh paint dried on the walls, and trays of real food rolled into the dining hall. Edward held a town hall in the common room, his notebook open. Residents spoke of long-forgotten needs: a broken wheelchair, overdue prescriptions, a garden they missed.
Every complaint will be addressed. I've allocated funds for each item on this list. No one here will be ignored again.
An elderly man with a trembling voice asked if the garden could return. Edward wrote it down and nodded. Marge, seated nearby, smiled for the first time in weeks. Charlotte arrived that afternoon, her eyes wide at the changes. She found Edward in the dining hall, coffee in hand, the regional manager taking notes.
Grandpa, I heard about Mark, about everything. You didn't have to do this all alone.
I wasn't alone. I had a notebook and a promise to the people who live here. And now I have you.
He walked her through the renovated wing, pointing out the new beds, the polished floors. Charlotte's silence was heavy with a mix of pride and grief.
He built an empire and hid it for my sake. Now, he's building a home. How do I even begin to deserve this?
In the garden, beside a newly planted rose bush, Edward told her, "Soon you'll understand everything, but for now, just be here with me." The trust arrived before noon, a thick envelope from Alden's office, delivered directly to Edward's new desk at Crestview.
Every page I turn, I feel the weight of my son's choices, but I will not carry them any longer.
He glanced out the window at the garden below, where residents were beginning to walk among the new rose bushes.
Charlotte, come see me this afternoon. It's time you understood the future I am building.
Mark, smelling vengeance, returned to the facility that afternoon. The security guard met him at the gate.
Let me through. I have a right to speak to my father. He'll listen to me.
The guard didn't move. Mark's voice cracked, then fell silent. He retreated, shoulders sagging. Upstairs, Edward watched the scene without a flicker. This was the man who'd traded his dignity for a monthly withdrawal.
He made his bed. Now he lies in it alone.
On the desk, the trust folder lay open, waiting only for a signature. Charlotte arrived as the afternoon light turned gold. Edward gestured to the chair beside his desk.
Charlotte, this document transfers control of my entire estate. Bishop Holdings, Crestview, everything, to you.
Grandpa, I can't. This is everything you've built. What if I fail you?
You won't. I've watched you your whole life. You are the only one who never saw me as a transaction.
Charlotte took the pen. Her signature was cautious but clear. Edward signed below, his hand steady.
Now you carry the name, not for power, for these people.
He picked up his phone and dialed. Mark answered on the first ring.
Mark, it's done. You've been removed from the will and all holdings. Don't come here again.
He hung up and walked to the common room. The residents, gathered for dinner, fell silent.
From today, this place is Bishop Gardens, a home with a heart, and I am staying right here with all of you.
Weeks rolled past. The corridors of the old Crestview now shone with fresh paint and the aroma of Herbert chicken. Edward walked the new dining hall each morning, a cup of tea in hand. Residents waved, their plates full. In the garden, Marge sat on the stone bench, a new shawl around her shoulders. Her walker stood beside her, a fresh photo of grandchildren taped to the front.
You kept your promise, Edward. My pills come on time. The roses bloomed. It was never about money. It was about being seen.
The staff, properly vetted, now moved with purpose. Henley's reports arrived on time, each page a testament to the new order. That evening, Edward stood in the renovated common room. The residents gathered, their faces lit by soft lamps and hope.
I came here through betrayal. I am staying by choice. This is my home.
Marge lifted her glass. The room echoed with quiet cheers and the clink of cups.
For the first time in years, the weight in my chest is simply gratitude.
Across town, a cramped apartment held the remains of a life. A for sale sign leaned against the window. Mark pulled a framed photo from a box, himself and his father, years ago. His thumb smudged the glass. He dropped it into the trash. The glass cracked against the metal bin, a sound that echoed too long. His phone buzzed, a court notification. His challenge to the trust dismissed with prejudice. Mark stared at the screen. The last legal door had slammed shut. No appeal, no inheritance, no excuse. He sat on the bare mattress, head in his hands. The apartment was silent except for the refrigerator's hum. Miles away, Bishop Gardens basked in afternoon sun. The windows reflected clean, warm light. In the garden, a white rose bent under a bee's weight. The stone bench sat empty, bathed in gold. Inside, Edward's laughter rose over a chessboard, Marge shaking her head in amused defeat. Bishop Gardens had become what its name promised, a home with a heart. In the garden, dappled light fell on the chessboard. Edward sat across from Charlotte, his usual opening already in motion.
Grandpa, I don't know how you did it. You turned a prison into a paradise.
I just gave people a reason to care. The rest, they did themselves. And Charlotte's respect. The rest was always negotiable.
Nearby, residents strolled past the rose bushes, laughter a soft chorus. Marge was teaching a nurse to play chess.
I am proud of you, Grandpa. More than I can say.
You are the best part of my legacy, Charlotte. This place is just bricks and gardens.
Beside the garden gate, a bronze plaque caught the evening light. Bishop Gardens, established by Edward Bishop. He touched the plaque once, then walked back to the garden, where his family waited, and in the heart of the home he reclaimed, Edward Bishop smiled, knowing his work was finally, completely done. That evening, the common room was packed. Every chair was taken, the air thick with quiet anticipation. He tapped a glass, and the murmur faded. His voice was low, but it cut through the silence.
I came here through betrayal. I stayed by choice. But you, all of you, made it a home. Home isn't a place. It's the people you choose, and I choose all of you.
His voice caught, but the smile never left. The silence held, heavy and full. Marge lifted her glass first. Then the room rose, a slow wave of silver hair and trembling hands.
To Bishop Gardens.
To Bishop Gardens, the chorus echoed back, a ragged but heartfelt unison. Edward drank, the cool cider doing nothing to wash down the sudden warmth in his throat. He sat among them, no longer the owner, just a friend who had come home. When the last toast was finished, Edward slipped through the garden door. The night air was cool and smelled of fresh soil. The garden was quiet. Only the roses moved, nodding in the slow breeze. He walked to the stone bench where a single white rose lay, placed there earlier. It was still fresh. He picked it up, brought it to his nose, and inhaled deeply. A small smile broke through his usual reserve.
For the first time in decades, I am exactly where I belong.
He didn't notice the caretaker lock the garden shed or the distant click of the main door. One by one, the common room windows went dark, leaving only the soft glow of the corridor nightlights. Bishop Gardens settled into the deep hush of early night, the only sound the rustle of leaves. And on the bench, Edward Bishop sat alone, holding a white rose, a man who had finally, irrevocably, come home. The rose petals stirred in the breeze, and the first stars appeared above the garden. The image began to soften at the edges, the garden blurring into a watercolor of deep blues and fading greens, the bench becoming a silhouette. Slowly, the screen faded to deep black, leaving only the title card in its wake. A promise written in gold. A single phrase emerged, etched in gold, hanging in the center of the darkness. It read, "Bishop Gardens, a home with heart." For a long, suspended moment, there was only that phrase, glowing softly. In the silence, the truth of those words settled over the theater like a blanket. For Edward Bishop, wealth never lived in bank statements or property deeds. It lived in the laughter of Marge, the focus of Charlotte, the trust of every resident. Some men inherit wealth, but Edward Bishop inherited a family. The screen faded to deep, silent black, and the story of Bishop Gardens became a quiet echo in the dark.